Hey friends, in the last video we talked about police encounters that I've had and that you're going to have if you're on the road, van life, van dwelling, RV life, adventuring, whatever. And that's getting pulled over at random and the dreaded late night knock on the door, basically checking you out or telling you to move. So in this video we're going to talk about the ways of reducing the chance of this happening to you to begin with. And I'm going to add a couple of more things. One is going to be really related towards women, which is just safety if you're having to deal with the police when you're out on the road. And I'm going to have a tip for everybody that's going to make your life easier when you do have to deal with police officers and you get that late night knock when you're parked somewhere. So let's get to it. Hey, we all know that first impressions are everything. So this is going to relate to the police in their first impressions of your vehicle. So I'm not telling you you have to have a nice, shiny new vehicle, but what I am saying is to make it as nice as you can. Now, the big white van that you see had a lot of paint peeling issues. I'm working on those. That's going to come in a future video. It had a lot of spots on the hood. I repainted the hood the other day. That alone made it 100% better. It has the ugly peeling pinstripes on the side. That's coming off. That's going to get redone. I'm going to show you cheap ways to do it. But again, it's going to make it look better. With the minivan, my gold minivan you've seen in videos is already in good shape. It didn't have any issues. But the one thing that it did have was, with being 20 years old, was those 20-year-old dull, fogged over headlights. I have never had any luck with any of those stupid little repair kits either actually doing anything or doing anything for any length of time. If you can make that work for you and you're a believer in it, more power to you, but I don't. So here's what I did. Older vehicles, parts are cheap. Newer vehicles, parts are really expensive. So being an older vehicle, I was able to get a set of new aftermarket headlights for 60 or 70 bucks. I jerked the old ones out, put the new ones in. It looks like a shiny new vehicle. Unless you know a lot about vehicles and when things were made and yada yada yada, nobody would be able to tell the difference in that minivan when I pull in and know whether it was 3 years old or 20 years old. That's what you're looking for. Easily blending in, looking like a fine, upstanding citizen. If you choose not to do that, expect to be pulled over more. Expect to be getting more of those knocks on the door to see what you're doing. Again, we can debate right and wrong all day long, but we're dealing with reality here. Doesn't matter what you think is right. Doesn't matter what I think is right. Now, as far as the late night knocks, especially with you ladies, depending on where you're at, if you're trying this overnight in a Walmart parking lot with people around, I wouldn't worry too much. Anything more than that, unless it's a real police car, not an unmarked car, a real police car that you can see, it's the city of whatever, sitting there with its lights flashing. Especially women, I would be a little more wary. I would be asking for identification. I would be asking if we could go to a more well-lit area or to the parking lot of the police station itself, just as a matter of safety. No real police officer is going to have a problem with any of those things. So again, and I'm talking especially to the ladies, don't put yourself in bad positions, because unfortunately there are people in places that impersonate police officers and cause problems. It's happened in California. Once upon a time, I spent a lot of time in Myrtle Beach. There was a guy running around down there in the 90s, off from the beach in those other little towns. He caused a lot of problems for a lot of people, and I don't know that they ever caught that guy. So make sure you're dealing with a real police officer and then do what you're supposed to do, and they're probably going to either leave you alone or ask you to move somewhere else for the night. Now, police officers know a lot about a lot of things. That doesn't, however, mean that they do any camping themselves or know a lot about camping and van RV lifestyles. This is where you run into problems sometimes. If someone comes and knocks on your door and tells you, hey, now it's midnight, well, you need to go to the state park and camp. Guess what? You can't, because the gates in most of those places are closed about 10 o'clock at night. Most of these campgrounds like this, most paid campgrounds, because they don't want people running in and out of there at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, trying to back in and beep from the signals and people talking to each other and yelling at each other and all that stuff. They don't allow it. So you don't have the option, if you're out traveling late, of even going to one of these places and getting in. And you need to have that conversation with that officer and explain that to them nicely, because they may not know that that is not an option for you. Once you tell them that, you explain that nicely, you may get a completely different reaction from them. They may make an exception for you for tonight. The other question that comes up all the time, and I'm not going to get into things that may be legal, illegal in certain places, but one thing that comes up all the time is just consuming beverages. What do I do? Am I allowed to do this? And you have these guys that are real rebel, especially. Well, I'm allowed to do this in this state, and I'm allowed to do this other thing in this other state, and these cops can't do this because, if I put the key on the back bumper or I put the key on the rear tire and I'm in there, they can't arrest me for whatever. Let me tell you something. If you truly believe that, you're an idiot. And you're probably the type of idiot that's going to have a really hard life. And if I've just offended you, go find you some people that will tell you what you want to hear. I'm going to tell you reality. If you choose to go out and do this and park on city streets and park in private parking lots and get yourself toasted and think you're not going to have a problem with the police, you're off in Never Never Land. And whatever you think the laws are won't matter until you get into court. Again, we're not talking about right and wrong, we're talking about reality. And the reality is that police officer can arrest you. You will spend the night in jail. You will potentially have your van impounded, and you're going to be out a lot of money. Now, when you get that case in court in front of a judge 45 days later, the judge may even rule in your favor. Other than making you feel like you're a winner of some type, what did you come up with? You were still aggravated, you still spent the night in jail, you still had your van impounded. All of these things cost you money, cost you aggravation. Even if they dismiss this case in a lot of states, I know in Virginia it doesn't matter, you're still responsible for court cost, which is about $100 now. So you're just going to be out a lot of money for trying to prove your point. So even if you win, you won't really win. So my advice, if you choose to do this, the first thing I would tell you is just don't. And second of all, I would make arrangements to be with friends or, I don't know, at a hotel or something, but you just don't want to put yourself in these situations if you're going to be a little bit too much. This stuff is supposed to be fun. It's not supposed to be an aggravation. It's not supposed to turn into a nightmare. There are going to be things on the road that we're all going to encounter that we simply can't control. However, this is one of the things that you can control. The choice you make, that's going to be up to you. And the results of that choice, you'll find out whether I'm right or wrong. So, what do you think about these issues? I want to hear it down in the comments. If you've been out on the road, have you had run-ins with the police? I want to know about that and your story down in the comments. Let's get a conversation started. We'll talk soon.